Hello friends, today we are going to discuss about attitude scale. So, in the previous class we were talking about the different objective scales and test, and among the 8 categories or broad categories that was that were identified by Fred and Karlinger, okay, among the all psychological scales or behavioral scales, one of the type was attitude scaling. Okay. So, now why I designed or why I include a special session or why I include a separate session for only attitude scale. Okay. It is because that the scale development activity was started with this particular variable, means most of the scale or most of the type of scale you know about, and not the most of the type of scale, it is the type of scale based on their development method or based on their construction method or procedure. Okay, so that was started with this attitude scaling initially. Now, it is not that this particular scales construction methods, okay, cannot be used for the other psychological or behavioral variables. It can be used for the measuring the other psychological variables also. Means the technique for construction of the attitude scale, okay, or the types of attitude scale, that is based on the techniques which are used for developing this attitude scale, that can be used for like for measuring opinion, for measuring personality like locus of control. Okay, it can be used for the description of the people's life, it can be used for any measuring any psychological state, okay, like anxiety, it may be because of the like depression. Okay, it can be used for the measuring the personal needs also, okay, like achievement, autonomy. Okay, so all this particular psychological or behavioral variable you can think about. Okay, so those all of them can be measured by developing scale using this particular techniques which was actually introduced for the development of the attitude scale. Okay, so now coming to the scales construction technique. Okay, so as a part of this course we are not going to talk in breadth and length on the scale construction technique. We will only take an overview of the what are the different types of scales available, okay, and certain part of the scale construction technique, like what should be the sentences or the statement in a scale should be like, okay, what should be their qualities, okay, what will be the response pattern, and these simple things. Okay, so to remind you, okay, so measurement is basically it is used as, okay, so it can be used means two dimension is there. Okay, one part is and one dimension is that the process by which the yardstick is developed, means the benchmark, okay, against which you actually measure certain psychological or sociological attributes or a variable. Okay, so and there are three broader approach for the development of this benchmark. Okay, so for the time being, okay, so I will again and again I will denote it by attitude scale, but again to remind you that these scaling techniques or this type of scale can be constructed and can be used, okay, for the other psychological or behavioral, measuring the other psychological or behavioral construct also. So now the first type of the scaling approach is the subject centered approach. Okay, so subject centered approach simply assume that systematic variation in the reaction of the subject, okay, to the stimuli. Okay, stimuli means the question or the item you put in the scale. Okay, so that is because of the differences in the individual. Okay, so different individual they respond in the different way to the stimulus. Okay, so that is the basic background of the or broader approach of the one type of scale development. Second type of scale development is that we call the stimulus centered method or judgment method. Okay, so first one was the subject centered method. Okay, so the difference in the stimulus or stimuli is or difference respond to the different question is because of the individual differences. Okay, so second method is telling that the systematic variation in the reaction of the subject to the stimuli. Okay, again stimuli means the questions. Okay, that can be attributed to the differences in the question itself, okay, in terms of the designated attributes, means the each of the statement they represent the different aspect of that particular the construct is being measured. Okay, it will be more clear when we come to the different type of scale based on this. Okay. So, the third broader method or third broader approach is that the response method. Okay. So, what response method is telling? That systematic variation in the reaction of the subject, the systematic variation of the reaction of the subject to the stimuli means question can be attributed to both the variation in the stimuli and individual differences means variation in the subject. Okay. So, these are the for now these are the three broader background or of development of the different type of scaling. Okay. So, given that the first type of scale that is based on the that subject centered method, we call them and it is popularly known as Likert scale. Okay. And the more technical name is summated rating scale. Okay. So, what are the so here I present the example of the summated rating scale. Okay. So, it has generally has multiple items. So, many times I discussed that why you need to have multiple items in your scale. Second, so each of the item along with each of the item there is a graded response categories. Okay. We call them continuum. Okay. So, there are here it is a 5-point continuum. Continuum means based on the anchored point in a particular continuum. Okay. So, we call this we take the name of that particular number of point for describing that continuum. So, here it is a 5-point continuum. 5-point continuum means it started with the totally disagree and continued towards the totally agree. Okay. Now, so that means the scale has two part, one is the number of questions and secondly for measuring or for responding to the number of questions or the statement there are a graded continuum and the respondent generally respond with the this in terms of the degree of their agreement or disagreement or degree of in terms of the magnitude of their expression with this particular continuum by indicating the appropriate the anchor point. Okay. So, along with this Likert scale basically assume that all the scale is developed, not assume, the scale is developed in such a way that all the items in the scale mean all the statement like here A, B, C are the three statements are there, they have the equal weightage or equal value, they are not superior or inferior than each other. Okay. They have the equal weightage. Okay. And secondly there is a continuum which basically allow you to express the intensity of the expression. Okay. So, if there is if a particular person responds to the more number of items or all the items, so there will be the maximum variation in the response is possible. Okay. So, as the more number of item a particular respondent respond with, okay, so there is a more chance of the variances. Okay. And so, these are the three particular quality. So, we start with that is inherent to the Likert scale means Likert scale and why it is called summated rating scale. If a particular response pattern of a particular respondent in all the question in this particular Likert scale is added. Okay. So, you can actually arrive at the attitudinal position or the psychological position of that person means all the responses like all the rating like it is maybe the for question A it is maybe 5. Okay. That means for totally disagree for next question it may be disagree or for the third question it may be again it may be strongly disagree. Okay. So, now depending on the whether this question is the positive or negative. Okay. So, based on that so you can actually add their score simply and you can arrive at the position of that person in the psychological continuum. Okay. So, that is why it is called the summated rating scale also. So, now this particular Likert scale is very easy to construct and very easy to use and that is why it is the mostly used psychological scale or psychological scaling method in the process of the social science research. Okay. But this particular scale has a very important or this particular scale has a very serious drawback. Okay. What is the drawback? That is this particular scale is prone to the response set variance. What is response set variance? Means okay. So, people or individual have the tendency to mark or to respond to a particular part of the scale. Okay. It will be much more easily understandable if I give an example of the teachers like okay, as a student you may face many teachers. Okay. So, there are some okay. So, there are or there were okay, some teachers okay. So, that who prefer to give the higher mark to the people means most of the students they generally get 80 in their subject. Okay. So, also you will find out another, maybe you faced another group of teacher, okay. So, that have they used to give consistently low marks. Okay. So, whatever you write in their subject you will get more less than 70 or less than 60. Okay. So, that is their preferred marking range. And another group of teacher maybe you faced in your academic career, okay. So, who used to give the average mark. Okay. So, this is also the tendency when you rate against an Likert type of scale. Okay. Means there is a tendency who will only rate to the left side of the particular scale or maybe the upper side of the particular scale. Okay. So, now if a particular person has the tendency to give the average marking, means most of the question or most of the statement they will mark as a neutral point, okay, if there is a neutral point in the scale. Okay. So, this is an error which we call the error of the central tendency. Okay. And there is a group of person who generally give the consistently low rating or low expression rating to the all the items or all the question. Okay. So, we call this particular problem the error of severity. Okay. And on the other hand, okay, there is a tendency among the individual to give consistently higher marks, like strongly agree for all the question. Okay. So, that we call the error of leniency. Okay. So, these are all part of the response set error. Okay. So, this like Likert scale is basically prone to that. So, now the response set, okay, we use certain methods to actually to avoid this response set bias. Okay. One of the particular method is the use of the negative and positive statement. Okay. So, some of the statement, okay, their negative equivalent statement may be also included in the scale, and also some of the negative statement, okay, which may not have the positive counterpart, okay, that may be included in the scale. But for if you look into the scale construction guidelines, or if you look into the what you should or should not do for when you design the statement of the scale. Okay. So, it is always preferred that you put positive statement and you write it in the active voice, but for avoiding this response set bias, sometimes it is required that you also randomly use the negative statement which may be equivalent or may have equivalent statement in the scale, or may not have equivalent statement, directly you put the negative statement. Okay. So, in that case, if response set bias is there, okay, now in the negative statement also their response they will not consider to changing the continuum. Okay. So, they will keep on like if the question, okay, like shopping takes me longer on the internet. Okay. Second one is that it is a good thing that so the consumer have the opportunity to buy products through the online portal. Okay. So, now these two statement you can take it in positive and negative. Okay. So, if you agree with this particular attitude towards the internet, okay, so the first statement, okay, so in the so you will generally, there is a chance that your answer will be the disagreement side. Okay. In the second one, on the other hand, your answer will be on the agreement side. Okay. But if there is a response set bias, so all this answer will be in the one side, maybe in the totally disagree irrespective of the question. Okay. So, that is one of the way to find out the response set bias, but it is not totally possible to avoid. You can actually detect response set bias, but it is not possible to avoid response set bias in the Likert type of scale when you use it for the measuring the psychological variables. Okay. Now, the next question generally arises that how many anchored point or what should be the continuum size, because here I presented the scale which is having the 5-point continuum. Okay. So, now the 5 point means, okay, so there is 2 continuum in the 2 extreme side and there is 1 neutral continuum. Okay. So, now instead of, so that is an odd number continuum. So, instead of the odd number continuum you can also use even continuum also, though the original Likert scale was only based on the odd number of continuum. Okay. So, even number of continuum is generally introduced, okay, when the researcher do not want the respondent to skip the question. Okay. So, sometimes, okay, so respondent they want to express their particular opinion or attitude towards the certain issues. Okay. So, to stop this the avoidance tendency, okay, so you can actually delete the neutral continuum. Okay. So, now it depends on the type of study or what is the purpose of your study. Okay. So, now the next question in the Likert scale happened, okay, what should be the size of the continuum. Okay. So, I told in the Likert scale from the 3 point to the 12 point continuum there is you may find out example the researcher used 3 point to 12 point continuum, means there are 3 response point or there are maybe 5 response point, 7 response point, 8 response point, 9 response point, 10 response point, even more than 10 like 12 point also. Okay, example is available for that also. Okay, so now there is a general rule that 5 to 7 point continuum generally resulted in the optimum variances. Okay, so if you increase the continuum beyond 9, okay, so there is a chance for the error variances in terms of error in judgment may creep in. Okay, so if your continuum is the less than 5, okay, so it generally resulted in the lesser variances, because one of the objective of your study or research is to find the variances, means individual variances or individual independent variables should get the chance to show their effect. Okay, that can be traced from the variances. Okay, so that thing is basically compromised when you use the less than 5 point continuum. So that is about continuum. I will again come to that particular continuum based on the different research in the next slide. Okay, so what should be the number of items in a scale? Now in this, different researchers have different opinion. Like Likert himself, okay, he talked about that at least 30 items should be there in the 25 to 30 item must be there in the final attitude scale. Okay, so the opposite, some of the certain authors, okay, so they also they talk about that the 17 to 18 item is the optimum item. Okay, so if you have more than that, it's okay, but up to it is the minimum number of item your scale must have. Okay, so there is no consensus on this particular method, but having the higher number of item that generally bring down the error rate in the Likert type of scale. Okay, so mostly in the usage, okay, you will find out around 42 items in the Likert scale, and that is taken as the optimum. Okay, now I already told you that for the controlling the response set bias, okay, you have to use the negative positive combination, okay, so that you can detect those response set bias. Now coming back to the number of points or number of anchored in the continuum. Okay, so now if the study objective, okay, so study objective maybe it is the standalone measure, like you remember I was talking about the case study, okay, or maybe the study is designed based on for the comparison. Okay, so now the basis on the comparison and on the basis of the study objective as well as the whether it is an standalone study or whether it is an objective study, you can change the number of continuum in your scale. Another thing you have to keep into the mind, okay, like you are studying the higher educated people. Okay, so highly educated people, they may be able to differentiate in terms of the, or they can actually able to calibrate their response on the basis of the, if you have the higher continuum in a scale. But if the person, or most of the cases, like we are talking about agricultural extension, okay, so where they study the farmers, okay, so the 5.5 to 7 point continuum is the most acceptable in this type of situation. Okay, so now again based on the type of research, like if you are using the Likert scale for the scale development, okay, so student means who are studying in the at least university or colleges, okay, 5.5 to 7 point continuum is acceptable. Now for the general people, if you are using the scale that particular Likert scale for the scale development and response is being taken to the general population, then the 5 point continuum is most suitable. Like example I told that in case of the studying on the farmers, the 5 point continuum is more suitable. Okay, so now the response pattern, okay, so in the Likert scale may vary. Okay, so it may be in terms of agreement, it may be in terms of the quality, it may be in terms of the likelihood, it may be in terms of the satisfaction. Okay, and also it may vary in terms of the 3 point, 5 point, 7 point scale. Like in terms of the disagreement, agreement, the rating point or the anchor point may be starting from the strongly agree to the agree, then proceed towards the neutral, disagree and strongly disagree. Okay, and for the purpose of the coding or for the purpose of the assigning numerals, okay, we generally started with the, if it is a positive statement, generally strongly agree or highest agreement point get the highest number. Like if for this particular example we may start from the 5, then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and for the negative question, the change just the numbering sequence just reverse. Okay, like if it is a negative statement, that means strongly disagree will give the 5 point scale. Okay, 5 point or get the 5 point this coding or 5 number as a measurement, then proceed with the decreasing order up to 1. Okay, so now like the scale may be, okay, based on the, or the continuum may be in measuring the quality, okay, then it may be like very good, good, acceptable, poor or very poor, okay, or satisfaction in case of the measuring satisfaction, okay. So, it may be the very satisfied, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, like dissatisfied, very dissatisfied, okay. So, it based on the, okay, the different terms of phrases or different phrases you can use based on the that how the what is the suitable response to that particular question or what the construct you are measuring. Okay. By now you understood, okay, that Likert scale is basically comprised of a number of attitude statement which have the equal weightage. Okay. Now, each of the statement is generally measured on a ordinal continuum. Okay. So, now here the disagreement generally happen, okay, that some of the maybe in your study also, okay, your instructor may told you that the Likert scale is basically ordinal type of scale, okay. But in actuality Likert scale is an interval type of scale if certain assumptions are met, means the ultimately the response of an individual in the each question does not matter, okay. The whole response of a person or the total response, because it is a summated rating scale, okay, total response of the person in the all the items that matters, okay. So, that is why the Likert scale is actually if it satisfy or if you fulfill a certain assumption, it actually act like an interval scale item, okay. Statisticians have shown a number of proof for proving this point, okay. So, at the end of this particular lecture, okay, I will provide in the further reading section, I have given the link of this particular papers, okay, or link of a particular interesting research paper which actually clear your understanding further that whether it is an interval scale or ordinal scale, okay. So, but this recommendation you should follow when you are using a Likert scale. The first one is that scale that have been developed to be used as a group must be analyzed as a group and only as a group, okay. So, it should not be used otherwise, okay, then it will actually give the wrong response. Second, okay, aggregated rating scale can be treated as a continuous scale, okay. Third one is that individual rating item with numerical response format of at least 5 category and in length may be treated as a continuous data, okay. That means, okay, your response category, the point that should be more than 5, okay, at least 5. And the fourth is that consider non-parametric or categorical data analysis approach for the individual rating items or numerical response format containing 4 or fewer category. That means, if the response pattern or response format have the less than 5 category, then you use the non-parametric test, okay. Now, here what this term non-parametric means, okay. So, non-parametric means, okay, there are certain tests, okay. So, for use any statistical technique, there are a number of certain assumptions should be fulfilled, okay. Like if I talking about parametric, that means there are assumption of that the normality of the population that should be fulfilled, okay. There is the assumption of the measurement level, that means the data should be in that interval or scaling level. So, if these assumptions are not fulfilled, then we use the certain techniques which are classified as the non-parametric. Those are basically having less power to detect the differences, okay. So, we will come to this particular what is non-parametric, parametric also when we talk about the analysis of the data. And last recommendation is that remember the benefit of the statistical model, okay. Like simple group comparison via t-test or ANOVA is much more useful, okay. So, the more statistical technique you used, okay, so that the more you get out of the interference or the interpretation you can make out of this particular scaling data. And as a independent, okay, Likert scale has one important, not only Likert scale, all the scale today we talk about, okay, that have one important characteristic that they are independent in nature, okay. So, that means most of the statistical or all the statistical technique you know, okay, that is applicable to this particular scaling method, okay. So, next category of the attitude scale is the Thornstone scale, or more technical name is the equal appearing interval scale, okay. So, this particular scale basically fall under the stimulus centered method, okay. So, now here, okay, so each of this as I told in the beginning of this particular discussion, okay. So, here each of the question or each of the items which are the part of the scale, they have the different weightage, means, okay. So, if you agree with a particular item, so it depends on the how much intensity of your expression is, that depend on the which particular question you agreed with, okay. That means, like in case of the Likert scale, each of the question or each of the statement have equal weightage, okay. Now, in case of the Thornstone scale or equal appearing interval scale, each of the statement have different weightage, okay. Secondly, as I told, the technical name of the Thornstone scale is the equal appearing interval scale. Now, all this question, okay, if you arrange their weightage on the scale. Okay, so they are basically lie from the equal interval from each other. Okay, so that is the important characteristics when we talk about the interval level of the measurement. Okay, so in case of the then Thunstone scale directly falls under the this interval scaling. Okay, that means here. So again coming back, so equal appearing interval scale, so each of the statement has assigned with one particular scale value. Okay, and the scales value generally indicate the strength of the an attitude or strength of a psychological construct on the agreement response. Okay, so now if you agreed with the first statement, okay, so that means it has a scale value of 0.33. Okay, so if someone is agreed with the maybe the third statement which has a scale value of 10.7, okay, so that is the more intensive expression. Okay, now if this particular scale, this was taken from the its originator, that is Thunstone and Cheb. Okay, so if the scale value is a lower for a statement, that indicate the more positive attitude towards the construct being measured. Here the construct was that this attitude towards the charge. Okay, like if you take the example of the sentence like, I feel that church service give me inspiration and help me to live up to my best during the following week. Okay, so it has a scale value of the 1.7 or weightage of the 1.7. Now if you take the more higher scale value statement like third statement, I think the organized charge is an enemy of science and truth. Okay, so the lower scale value statement generally express the positive or the more positive response or attitude towards that particular construct being measured. Okay, but this particular scale also have the tendency or have a particular type of error or limitation, that is the item desirability error. Okay, so item desirability error means simply item is chosen because it particularly agrees with the some socially desirable idea or some desirable idea what the respondent think. Okay, so it is not, though it is free from the response set bias, but it is also affected by the item desirability error to some extent. Okay, so now this Thunstone scale can be used, okay, as such also, but it can also be used like an by actually mixing it with the Likert type of scale. Means a scale can be designed, okay, that where the each of the item may have the certain attitude value or certain weightage, and there be again you can insert this intensity of the expression of the attitude by using an continuum or by using an ordinal continuum, that also can be used with this particular type of scale. Okay, so one last type of scale or broad type of attitude scale is known as the cumulative scale. Okay, now again its technical name is the cumulative scale, and it become famous in the name of the Goodman. Okay, so Goodman was one of the researcher who developed a scale for the using this cumulative method. Okay, so now what are the characteristics of this cumulative method of the scaling? Okay, so generally the cumulative method or cumulative scale is comprised of the relatively smaller set of the homogeneous item which are unidimensional. So this scale, one important characteristic is that unidimensional, means all the statement they basically measure the one particular construct. Okay, and also if you compare between the Likert scale, Thunstone scale and cumulative scale, so Likert scale has the generally has the higher number of the item. Okay, in the Thunstone scale, okay, it generally is much shorter than the Likert scale. Also designing is not simple as a Likert scale. Okay, and if you come to the cumulative scale, the construction of the cumulative scale is much more complex than the Thunstone scale. Okay, so now in this particular scale, why it is called cumulative scale? Now if we agreed with an higher order item, so that means you automatically agreed with all the lower order items, all the previous lower order item. Like if you take the example of that, okay, like I would not object to sitting next to the Scottish person. Okay, but if you take the fifth statement, that I should not have no objection to my son or daughter marrying a Scottish person. Okay, so this is from a social distance scale of the Bogart-Das. Okay, so that is the another example of this cumulative scale, that is the social distance scale which was developed by the social scientist Bogart-Das. Okay, so now if you agrees with the fifth number of item, that means you automatically agrees with all the previous item. Okay, so that is the beauty of this particular type of scaling. Okay, so now the summated rating scale basically concentrate on the subject and their place on the scale. Okay, where we come to the Thunstone scale, okay, or equal appearing interval scale. Okay, so they mainly concentrate on the items and their position on the whole scale. In case of the cumulative scale, okay, they concentrate on both the scalability of the set of items, that means items weightage, and the scale position of the individual. Okay, so that I already told in case of when we start with this discussion in the three border approach of the scale construction. Okay, so now coming to the last part of this particular discussion. Okay, so among these three type of scale, means attitude scale, like we are talking about summated rating scale, we are talking about Bogart cumulative scale, we are talking about equal appearing interval scale. Okay, so which scale to use in which particular situation? Okay, so Likert scale is basically it is need when general you are trying to measure the attitude or opinion or on a topic which can be expressed in terms of the intensity. Okay, Thorndson scale is when it's being used when you want to precisely measure the intensity of an attitude with statement carefully calibrated for the level of agreement. Okay. On the other hand, Goodman scale is used when you need to assess the hierarchical concept where the agreeing with a stronger statement implies that your agreement with all the weaker statement. Okay. So, now this particular three sentence, okay, that may not be that much clear. Okay. So, when to use the Likert scale? Okay. So, if you go through this, okay, it will be much more clearer to you. When to use the Likert scale? Okay. So, Likert scale is it is a common choice or being used for the general survey, okay, like for measuring customer satisfaction, employee agreement, opinion of the topic on a or any range of on a range of perspective which can be expressed in terms of the intensity of the where the people varies in terms of the intensity of the agreement. Okay. Thorndson scale, okay, Thorndson scale generally you need to use this particular scale when you want to accurately measure the intensity of an opinion or any psychological construct. Okay. And also when you are dealing with sensitive or nuanced topic. Okay, sensitive topics on the personal topic, it is better to use the Thorndson scale. Okay. The Goodman scale, okay, Goodman scale it is being used when you want to assess the concept that has a clear progression of the levels. Okay. Like you want to measure the severity of a condition or like increasing levels of the commitment of a cause, okay, like cause like the suicide rate. Okay. So, in this type of study, this Goodman scale is much more useful, but you have to keep into the mind the development complexity is much higher for the cumulative scale and it decreased towards the Likert scaling, and also the Likert scale generally resulted in the higher variation in the data set. Okay. So, today we discussed about the three broader type of attitude scale that can be used for the other, again I am repeating, for the other measuring the other psychological concept also. Okay. And what are the characteristics in overview of this or characteristics of this particular scale. We talk in details about the Likert scale, what is the continuum, how many continuum to use, okay, and also talk about the equal appearing interval scale and Goodman scale and when to use this particular scale. Okay. So, now you can go through this particular book and this the research article I was talking about within the lecture, okay, for your better understanding of this particular aspect. Okay. So, with this we will conclude our today's lecture. Thank you.